Islam Podcast. Den Islam hören und erleben.
This point is with it, and I will end just with the next point because it's connected to the point before. The second thing is so the first level of diversity is different interpretations on secondary issues. And the second level is culture. Why? Because everything which is not against the principle in any culture in the world is accepted by Islam. So this is why we have African Muslims having the same set of principles, different interpretations, and a different culture. So one Islam, many interpretations, many cultures. So this is it.
Yeah, thank you very much. Wenn ich es recht verstanden habe, vor allem das Arabisch habe ich natürlich wunderbar verstanden. Und verschiedenen Kulturen zu akzeptieren. Darum geht es.
Thank you. So, when you are asking me why don't you use the concept of Euro-Islam, I'm speaking about European Islam or Western Islam, saying it's the same Islam but with a Western culture or European culture. So this is the way I'm talking about it. But why I'm not using the concept of Euro-Islam is that this concept was produced and formulated by someone who is living in Germany, who is Bassam Tibi. Bassam Tibi once was saying, this Tariq Ramadan is stealing from me this concept, and he is doing as if he's his concept. I'm sorry, I acknowledge the fact that it's coming from Bassam Tibi, it's not coming from me, and we may speak about a European Islamic culture, but we don't mean the same. So there is a disagreement about the fundamentals between me, Bassam Tibi and myself. So this is it. This is a concept that I'm not using because it's produced by a specific thinker. I'm critical about what he's saying. I don't accept many of his positions. He knows that. And that's it. That's why I'm using European Islam as to the universal principle and European as to the culture. And even more than that, I'm saying that we have European cultures. Because even you in Germany, you don't have the same culture as mine. I don't know which is the best, but we don't have the same. We have many European cultures. There is not only one. So this is just to answer your question and also to make it clear what I'm not saying. Because many of the people, they have a superficial understanding of what I'm saying. Say, oh, he is trying to Europeanize Islam or to modernize Islam, which are things I never said. This is not me.
Professor Ramadan benutzt den Begriff Euro-Islam auch deswegen nicht, weil eben Tibi ihn ja doch wohl kreiert hat. Und Herr Ramadan, der Tariq Ramadan versteht darunter etwas gänzlich anderes als Tibi. Und er sagt eben, wenn schon Euro-Islam, dann ist das nur auf der Kulturebene, auf der Ebene europäischer Kultur und nicht auf der Vorstellung eines anderen Islam. Es gibt nur einen Islam.
Okay, so now let me come to our discussion today about Islamic theology in Europe or in the West, and in which way we have to deal with that. First thing, which is quite important, very often when I am outside, when I am giving lectures to ordinary people outside, I may use the concept of theology because it's simple. It's very accessible for people. But in fact, we have to be very cautious because we have to question ourselves. Can we use the concept of theology when it comes to the realm of Islamic sciences? And this is something which is quite important. Theology means a discourse on God, talking about God. This is theology, theos and logos, which in Islam, from the very beginning, is something that we are not doing. The first Islamic science is a legal, interpersonal relationship between people and then also the relationship with God, which the first Islamic science is fiqh, which is jurisprudence, law and jurisprudence. So I'm not using the concept. Academically speaking and scientifically speaking, I'm not using the concept of theology. But if we are using it, we have to be quite clear about what are we talking about. Because it's theology plus legal framework. So when you are doing fiqh in Islam, you are not doing theology. It's not the same. While this is the main Islamic science when it comes to this. So first is really to be quite clear on the concepts that we are using. And it may be that the German Muslims, within academia or outside, one of the most important challenges that you have is a question of translation. Because the words that are used, the concepts are not the same. And you cannot just export these concepts to another Islamic or religious traditions without understanding that these concepts are loaded with something. The part of theology, speech or discourse on God in Islam is very reduced compared to the Catholic and the Protestant tradition. It has nothing to do. These are two different worlds. So we have to be very cautious when we come to this. This is one first point. So now the second point is that when we speak about Islamic theology, very often we mean fiqh, legal jurisprudence, law and jurisprudence. And by the way, fiqh is not only jurisprudence. Fiqh is law and jurisprudence altogether, is the framework that are the immutable framework, but also anything which has to do with movement and motion. Like Muhammad Iqbal was saying, for example, the concept of ijtihad helping us to come with new answers for new challenges or new questions is the principle of movement in the Islamic legal tradition. And this is not new. This is not to modernize Islam. It's as old as Islam, because the prophet of the Muslims, the prophet was sending Muaz ibn Jabal in Yemen, and he asked him about the way he was going to produce legal thought. He said, I will rely on the Quran, and then I will rely on your tradition, and then I will just use my mind. Meaning that at that time, between Mecca or Medina at that time and Yemen, at the same period of time, the same century, when he was there, already he was understanding two geographical environments are going to push you to come with new answers, because this is not the same environment. Yemen is not Medina. And this was in the same period of time. So from the very beginning, this was their understanding that you need to have a sense of what is immutable and what is changeable. It's not new. It's as old as the Islamic tradition. And here, we're not talking about theology. We are talking about legislation, law, which is what we call, in a very wrong way, Islamic law, without understanding exactly the way we are dealing with this. And the last point, as an introduction, so we have to be very cautious about the words and the concepts. We may challenge the concept of theology or Islamic theology, and if we use it, we have to be clear on what we are talking about. Second point, we are the main field, will be and is in the West, as well as in the Muslim majority countries, law and jurisprudence, al-fiqh, and not even studied, unfortunately, in the great majority of our universities, we don't talk about usul al-fiqh, the fundamentals of law and jurisprudence, but we speak about the consequences. While today, the book that was just translated into German, Radical Reform, is a book on usul al-fiqh, which is the fundamentals, that maybe we have to think about the framework that we have perceived as universal while it was produced by scholars in a very specific period of time. So this is the second point. And the third point, which is quite important when it comes to us teaching Islam, is our relationship with texts. Why? Because Islam is a religion with no hierarchy, no church, no clergy, but with texts. And when we don't have an authority between you and the text, you have to ask yourself, from where comes the authority of the people who are reading the texts? This is quite important. It's not because there is no power of interpretation or power of saying, this is the church, this is the Pope, this is the hierarchy. Still we have people reading the texts. And the question is,